Monster Madness! The Wolfman and the Frankenstein monster together in one film. Need I say more? This is the first monster brawl, before King Kong vs. Godzilla, before Alien vs. Predator or Freddy vs. Jason. This was the first Universal monster movie I ever saw. It got me hooked, so I'd say it's a good one to start with. It opens with a spectacular cemetery scene where two grave robbers seek out the tomb of Larry Talbot, the Wolfman. The camera pans to the right, showing off the full scope of this awesome set. They break into the crypt and open the coffin. Unfortunately, they chose the night of a full moon to do it, and apparently the moonlight on Larry's corpse is all it takes to bring him back to life. Larry's body is discovered in the streets and he's brought to a hospital. He tries to explain to the doctors that he turns into a werewolf on each full moon, but they think he's out of his mind.
There's a curse upon me. I change into a wolf.
As a sequel to The Wolfman, it's quite good. You see things you never saw in the first movie, like a shot of the full moon, believe it or not, and a close-up of Larry's face turning into the Wolfman. I think the appeal of this effect is knowing how it was done, that Lon Chaney Jr. had to lie still for hours and hours while the makeup was gradually applied. There's also a really creepy moment where the Wolfman stalks a police officer. Larry goes to see Maliva, the gypsy woman from the first movie, played by Maria Ouspenskaya. He asks for her help because he's tired of suffering through his werewolfism. He wants to die again and rest in peace. She tells him that there's a man who can help him, so they go out on a journey to find, guess who? Dr. Frankenstein.
Frankenstein? Don't mention that name around this town.
Supposedly, Frankenstein holds the secrets of death and can help Larry die. But really, all he has to do is get killed by something silver again, right? Couldn't he just ask Maliva to do it for him and cremate him this time? Well, it doesn't matter anyway, because they find out Frankenstein is dead. The townspeople don't clarify if this is supposed to be Ludwig Frankenstein from the previous film, or if they're talking about the original Henry Frankenstein. All they said is that Frankenstein and the monster died when the castle burned to the ground. Well, that sounds like what happened in the last movie, but what's the deal with the castle? Isn't that the same castle that was destroyed at the beginning of Ghost of Frankenstein? They blew that thing up. Now it's perfectly standing again? Not to mention, the ending of Ghost of Frankenstein took place in the doctor's house. It's the house that burned down, not a castle. The final straw to this mess is when Larry actually finds the monster, buried in ice. The monster went from fire to fucking ice. You can't get any more opposite than that. I would just say this movie's another reboot, but there is some continuity, or at least there was. Because originally, the monster had a voice and explained that Igor's brain was put into his body and then he went blind, which is exactly what happened in the last movie. But the monster's dialogue was cut, so now there's no explanation that he's blind. You see him staggering all around with his arms out for no apparent reason, and there's some moments where you can still see the monster's mouth moving. I should mention here that the monster is played by Bela Lugosi. Ironic that he was considered for the role in the first Frankenstein. The common story is that Lugosi turned the role down originally, and since then he's regretted it, so this was like his second chance. Everyone's criticized his performance, but the reason it's so awkward is because he's supposed to be blind.
No, it's me.
Today, when people imitate the monster, they outstretch their arms like that without even realizing it's the Lugosi monster they're imitating. How about that? When people imitate Dracula, it's always the Lugosi Dracula, so it all comes back to Lugosi. Supposedly, the reason for cutting the monster's dialogue was that the studio executives didn't like Lugosi's voice. When they were screening dailies, everyone laughed at hearing the monster speak with a Hungarian accent. I find that hard to believe. At the end of Ghost of Frankenstein, when Igor's brain is in the monster, isn't that Lugosi's voice?
I, Igor, will live forever.
Nobody laughed then, and if they did, they wouldn't be laughing anymore now. Also, if the voice was that hysterical, couldn't they just dub over it with someone else's voice? The same way they dubbed Lugosi's voice over Chaney's. According to the original script, the dialogue was extremely confusing. The monster spoke as if he had a split personality, saying things like, "Dr. Frankenstein created this body to be immortal, and his son gave me a new brain." So is it Igor speaking, or is it the monster? If the original dialogue really sounded that mixed up, then cutting it was for the best. Wouldn't it be great if these lost scenes were found? It's a shame that Universal threw them away. Obviously, back then, no one was thinking about DVD extras. Another thing worth mentioning is the title. It's clear that in the trailer and on the posters, they are most definitely calling the monster Frankenstein. But I do have a theory. Larry meets Frankenstein's daughter, Elsa. She is a Frankenstein and Larry is the Wolfman, so there you go, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. By the way, is she supposed to be the daughter of the original Frankenstein or the daughter of Ludwig Frankenstein? It seems as if we're leaning towards Ludwig because of that story about him perishing with the monster when his house or castle burned down. That would make her the same character in Ghost of Frankenstein, who was played by Evelyn Ankers. But Evelyn Ankers was also in The Wolfman, and since this movie is also a sequel to The Wolfman, maybe that's why she couldn't be the same actress. Actually, never mind, it wouldn't have mattered. They recycle actors more than a kindergarten play. It's the fourth Frankenstein movie to have Dwight Frye.
He said he'd blow up the dam.
It's the third to have Lionel Atwill, who was an inspector, a scientist, and now he's a mayor. Tom Stevenson, the gravedigger who was killed in The Wolfman, is now a grave robber. Lugosi played a character named Bela in The Wolfman, the werewolf that bit Larry Talbot. Of course, he was also Igor, and now he's the monster. Then there's Doris Lloyd and Patrick Knowles, who were in The Wolfman, and now they're the nurse and doctor. I attest a lot of this shameless recycling and lack of continuity to the fact that there was no such thing as home video. Audiences didn't have the chance to rewatch movies to freshen their memories. It could be years between each sequel, but actually I take it back because these movies were coming out rather quickly. But whatever the case, they didn't care as much about continuity as we do today. It's not even clear what time period these movies are supposed to take place. The Wolfman seems like it was set in the present day because there were cars. This one claims to take place 4 years after the Wolfman, but they're back to horse and buggies, and there's a big song and dance scene that looks like something from older times.
Tonight we toast our happy host.
I do have to comment that this is one of those scenes you either love or hate. I'm really sorry to admit, I think I love it. There's something about it that tickles my funny bone. I guess because it's so unnecessary. The whole movie just takes a break. Time to raise your beer glasses. Okay, where the hell am I now? Oh yeah, alright. Larry's doctor from the hospital catches up with him, and would you know, his name happens to be Dr. Frank. Couldn't they come up with a name that sounded a little different than you-know-who? Well, he agrees to help Larry die, so they go into Frankenstein's old dusty laboratory and strap both Larry and the monster to operating tables. Using Frankenstein's notes, they plan on draining the life energy from both of them. But all in the flash of a second, the Frankenstein curse hits him, and Dr. Frank gets power hungry and wants to see the monster at full strength.
I've got to see it at its full power.
So literally, Dr. Frank becomes the Frankenstein of the film. He's punished almost instantly as the monster breaks loose and throws him around. Frank really fucked up because he had to wait till the last possible minute when the full moon was rising. So now he's got two monsters to deal with. Just as the monster carries off Elsa, the Wolfman attacks the monster, the two of them start fighting, and movie history is made. The monster is much stronger, but the Wolfman is more agile. I like how they balance their skills. Most of what you see here of the monster is played by a stunt double. I wonder how little you actually see of 60-year-old Bela Lugosi. The villagers use dynamite to blow up a dam, flooding and destroying the castle. The two monsters perish instantly. So, really? The whole movie has been a suicide quest for Larry Talbot, and all he had to do was drown? Or was it the castle falling on them? Who knows? I think they could have come up with a better way to kill the monsters, but nevertheless, it's a thrilling ending and is an enjoyable monster flick all the way around. The logic is a complete mess, but that only makes it more fun to talk about. The first half, which focuses on the Wolfman, holds itself together much better. After he meets the monster, it goes downhill, until the climax when things get awesome. The opening cemetery scene and the final battle are the two highlights which bookend what is an imperfect but entertaining film.